The demon's wings burst out from his hands like jagged spears of darkness, launching into the sky. His scream ripped through the city like a siren, sending people into chaos. Some bolted in fear, while others froze in place, their faces twisted in horror. Among the chaos, a boy stood motionless, his eyes locked on the terrifying figure above. Sparks danced in the air, their glow reflecting in his crimson eyes. A sudden bolt of lightning streaked across his cheek, breaking his trance. He winced, turning away as pain surged through him. Electricity crackled around his body. It wasn't just light, it was agony. His pupils narrowed, and he screamed as if thousands of crimson threads were piercing through his flesh. Lightning wrapped around him like a vengeful force, lifting him into the air as he thrashed against the pain. Then it appeared, high above him, a glowing pink sphere, small at first, but steadily growing. It hovered for a moment before descending slowly, as if drawn to him. It stopped just before his forehead, and then, without warning, the sphere merged into him. Everything went white. He woke up with a gasp. Lying in bed, his body felt heavy and numb, like he'd been hit by a storm. Was it a dream, he thought? But something deep inside told him otherwise. He had awakened, something. He sat up, gazing out the window as memories and history flooded his thoughts. It had been 100 years since countless dimensional portals opened across Earth. Savage monsters had poured through, pushing humanity to the brink of extinction. People ran, helpless. But in the midst of this despair, some began to awaken powers, abilities fueled by the same dimensional energy that poured through those portals. Those first gifted ones stood tall against the threat, ushering in the era of talents. A knock interrupted his thoughts. His sister's voice called out, asking if he had awakened. He looked down at his hand, where a strange stone hummed. It sparked, lightning shot from it with a crack. His eyes widened. A talent, but a low-level one, he realized bitterly. Low-level talents are practically worthless, he muttered. But then he clenched his fists. Even so, if I can't become a warrior, how will I protect my little sister? The door opened. His sister walked in, cheerful and excited. So? How did it go? She asked, her hands clasped together. He put on a grin. Excellent, he said. Her eyes lit up with joy. I knew it. My big brother is the best. He ruffled her hair and smiled. Don't worry, I'll become the strongest warrior, just wait. She bounced in happiness. I even made your favorite. Let's eat to celebrate. She turned to leave just as something strange appeared before him, a floating window, digital and glowing. He stared in disbelief. Status window, cultivation talent, low-level freezing talent, low-level, unawakened, what, he whispered, tapping the screen. It flickered and shifted to a new page. Name, Yesine talent, copy ability, locked, his heart skipped. Copy ability? His sister tugged his hand, pulling him toward the kitchen. Come on. It's getting cold. As she held his hand, a faint pink glow surrounded her palm. More system windows appeared before Yesine, this time, showing her status. And then, something incredible, a message next to her talents read, copyable. He blinked in shock. I can copy other people's talents? He didn't know how it worked yet, but the option was there. This changed everything. At the kitchen table, the aroma of braised pork filled the air. I made your favorite, she said proudly. He smiled, thanked her, and sat down. She kept piling food onto his plate while he thought deeply. Copying talents, that's incredible. But I can't try it on her. Her freezing talent is extremely rare. If she fully awakens, she'll be unstoppable. He chewed quietly, eyes drifting to the family photos behind her. Their parents smiled back at him from the frame. Mom. Dad, if you're watching us, I promise, I'll protect her. You don't have to worry anymore. Later, the sky was clear as Yesine walked through the nearly empty streets. He needed to test his ability. He approached a passerby. Circular waves pulsed out from him like sonar. Low-level talents. Everyone around him had them. Too weak, he thought, frowning. I need someone stronger, at least average level. At this rate, it's useless. Still, even with a low-level awakening, he could now roam freely and search. He thought about joining the academy for official testing, but if people found out about his copying ability, things could get complicated. Then, a smile crept onto his face. He had a better idea. Yesine raised his head and stepped toward the gates of 5th Len High Academy. As Yesine stood silently, his gaze fixed on the bustling gate, he watched the armored warriors rushing about. He studied one of them intently, imagining how many among them must possess average talents. A small smile crept onto his face, because with his unique ability, he was sure that no matter how talented they were, he would one day surpass them all. 10 days later, Training Ground No. 3, Lanai 5th Academy. The shouts echoed across the field. To become a warrior, one must first become a disciple. And to become a disciple, physical training is the foundation. A middle-aged instructor sat cross-legged on the ground, addressing the young trainees. Yesen, along with the others, listened closely. The instructor stressed a key principle: the exercise was successful only if one could concentrate the energy vortex at chest level. Suddenly, a student next to Yesen called out. The boy next to him had fainted. The instructor stood up immediately, his tone cold. He ordered everyone to ignore the weak ones. Only those who could gather energy had any chance of becoming true warriors. Yesen sat deep in thought. Why am I failing? He wondered. Could it be that my cultivation talent really is that low? The day ended with disappointment. The teacher dismissed them harshly, claiming they were the worst batch of students he had ever trained. Before leaving, he mocked them one last time, telling them to take inspiration from Chen Dong if they wanted to stop being pathetic. Dripping with sweat, Yesen walked alongside Jiang Bi through the academy grounds. Curious, Yesen asked who Chen Dong was. Jiang Bi's expression turned serious. Chen Dong had become a disciple in just half a month and was now being trained personally by the academy head. That revelation sparked something in Yesen. If that's the case, then my talent can't be so low after all. Jiang Bi suddenly grinned and pulled out a slip of paper, Chen Dong's autograph. Proudly, he said he would sell it when Chen Dong became as powerful as the academy leader, curious to see how much it would fetch. Yesen could only chuckle awkwardly in response. Just then, a wave of excitement rippled through the crowd. Chen Dong has arrived, someone shouted. The young prodigy entered, waving and smiling. Students rushed toward him. Jiang Bi hurried forward, asking for another autograph. Yesen, watching closely, smirked. Time to confirm something. He activated his ability, eyes fixed on Chen Dong. A status window appeared, average cultivation talent. Yesen's smile widened. As I thought. He walked up to the boy, pretending to greet him. Chen Dong told everyone to calm down. He had come to cheer them on, not hand out signatures. Yesen stepped forward. Then, can I at least shake your hand? Chen Dong agreed, first shaking hands with a few girls, wishing each of them good luck. Finally, he turned to Yesen and extended his hand. Their palms met. A faint pink glow shimmered at the point of contact. Good luck, Chen Dong said with a smile. As he walked away, Yesen watched him leave, grinning slyly. That night a heavy rain fell, drenching the forest. Yesen stared at the status window. The text glowed clearly, mid-level cultivation talent successfully copied. The system prompted him, start fusion. But Yesen hesitated. He remembered the vision. The pain. The lightning. That agonizing scream. What happens after fusion? Even with the fear, he made his choice. Start fusion. Power surged through his body. Agony followed. Yesen fell to the ground, gripping his chest, screaming in pain. His fingers clawed at the earth as if trying to anchor himself to reality. He was determined. This pain, it's worth it. Thunder cracked. Rain poured. Eventually, the storm in his body subsided. He panted, soaked in sweat. The status window flickered back, mid-level talent acquired. A grin formed on his lips. He had done it. His cultivation level had risen. But before he could relax, another message appeared, copy ability cooldown, 30 days. Yesen blinked. A month until he could copy again? He smiled. That's more than enough. This ability is terrifying. With that thought, he sat cross-legged and began the training exercise again. The vortex formed easily this time. It swirled at his chest, and his hair rose slightly from the force. He stood up, more confident than ever. Stepping out of the cave, he looked out into the wilderness. In the distance, lightning curled through the sky. I will become a great warrior, he thought. No matter what. 1 month later, under the light of a full white moon, a swift shadow darted across the ground, a white wolf bounding effortlessly through the forest. Its fangs gleamed as it sprinted. Elsewhere, a small girl held her father's hand. Papa, what's for dinner? She asked sweetly. The man smiled. Whatever my darling wants. As Yesen walked through the academy, he reflected. He had made progress, but he still had a long journey ahead. Meanwhile, the father and daughter wandered off in another direction, talking about cooking fish once he returned. Yasin was still thinking about how Changdong was receiving one-on-one training directly from the head of the academy, making his progress much faster than others. Lost in thought, Yasin was suddenly jolted back to reality. A stream of blood shot up in the air like a scarlet fountain. A lantern crashed to the ground with a dull crack. A man nearby had been attacked by a monstrous beast. Alarmed, Yasin turned around just in time to see the blood and the chaos that followed. The monster pinned the bleeding man down onto the asphalt with its massive paw. A girl, tears streaming from her eyes, called out desperately to her father. The monstrous wolf growled, steam gushing from its mouth. Yasin froze. Panic spread among the bystanders. They turned to flee, shouting that a monster had killed a man. But even amidst the panic, Yasin's eyes remained fixed on the terrifying creature. For some reason, the girl didn't run. Instead, she stood frozen, watching as the wolf devoured her father. The monster's face was stained with blood, and just then, another noise stirred the air. The wolf shifted its attention toward the girl. Before the beast could pounce, Yasin dashed forward and snatched her away from the wolf's paws. Fear gripped him. The monster was too fast, and he feared they wouldn't escape. At that critical moment, a man suddenly descended onto the battlefield, landing heavily enough to crack the ground beneath him. Though the monster dodged his initial blow, the newcomer wasted no time and attacked again. Stone chips scattered as the battle raged. The monster crouched low, its eyes glowing a menacing scarlet, preparing to pounce. The man, frowning, apologized for the delay. Yasin asked him who he was. The man replied with a grin, "Everyone calls me Captain Windwolf." Turning back to the battle, Captain Windwolf told Yasin to leave the Silver Moon Wolf to him and focus on protecting the girl. Yasin nodded without hesitation. With a sharp whistle of his sword cutting through the air, Captain Windwolf charged. The man and the wolf clashed fiercely. Yasin quickly covered the girl's eyes with his hand, urging her not to look at the horror unfolding. Captain Windwolf shouted that the monster was stronger than he anticipated. Though he swung his sword with precision, the wolf's nimbleness allowed it to dodge again and again. Gritting his teeth, the captain fought relentlessly. But he wasn't alone. Reinforcements arrived, leaping down from above. The wolf snarled furiously at the newcomers, but realizing it was now outnumbered, it attempted to flee. The warriors attacked in unison, cornering the beast. As Captain Windwolf got into position again, he ordered his men to press the attack. Swords stained with blood flashed in the dim light as they fought. One warrior approached the fallen wolf cautiously, asking if the creature was dead. But the wolf's claw twitched. Captain Windwolf frowned. Suddenly, the wolf screamed, entering a furious state known as the Bloody Flash. At once, the warriors jumped back, but not fast enough. One was hit. Captain Windwolf cursed under his breath but kept his composure. Though the wolf was dangerous, he reassured his men that it had weakened. Turning to Yasin, he instructed him to quickly get the girl to safety. However, Yasin's eyes gleamed with a different thought. He saw an opportunity he couldn't ignore. With a determined grin, Yasin launched himself into the fray, shocking the captain. Yasin swung his fist with all his strength, punching the monster. Another strike followed, and just then, the system window appeared in front of him. It reported, "Talent successfully copied." But Yasin didn't stop. He kept attacking fiercely, even as the system repeatedly confirmed the successful copying of the monster's talents. Blow after blow, Yasin hammered down on the wolf until, finally, the monster lay lifeless. Raising his fist for one last strike, Yasin was intercepted by Captain Windwolf, who firmly told him to stop. The monster was already dead. Satisfied, Yasin withdrew his hands from the creature. The captain instructed his squad to clean up the battlefield, remove the corpses, and take care of the girl. Then, turning to Yasin, he thanked him for his bravery and offered him a future place among the warriors once he officially became one. Yasin beamed with pride. Night fell over the city. Deep silence enveloped the streets as Yasin washed the blood from his hands in a public restroom. He thought about not showing himself to Yayo in such a state. After taking a deep breath, Yasin began the walk home. When he quietly opened the door to his house, he paused. Yayo was asleep on the couch, murmuring softly about her brother and smiling in her sleep. Relieved, Yasin smiled gently. His eyes fell on the set dinner table. He thought back to today, the first day he had faced a real monster. Walking over to Yayo, he gently covered her with a blanket, the weight of the day's event still fresh in his mind. After covering his sister carefully, Yasin shivered. Listening to tales of monsters had been chilling, but seeing them firsthand was hundreds of times worse. Gazing at his sister's peaceful face, he made a firm decision. For her safety, he had to become a warrior as soon as possible. Later that night, Yesen returned to his room, a towel in hand. Sitting heavily on the bed, he couldn't shake off a growing curiosity. Could a monster's talent be merged into a human's body? As he pondered, a familiar system window popped up before him. Yesen stared intently at the display, realizing that attempting this might be even more painful than before, possibly even fatal. But if it meant he could protect those dear to him, he had no choice. The system showed the Silver Moon Wolf's talent. Gritting his teeth with resolve, Yesen stuffed the towel into his mouth and bit down hard. The moment he initiated the copy process, excruciating pain tore through his body. The system announced the start of the speed talent transfer, and immediately, Yesen collapsed to the floor, veins bulging across his arms from the overwhelming agony. His bones felt like they were shattering one by one. Then came a horrifying twist. His leg bent unnaturally. Yesen let out a silent scream, his mind clouded with despair. Had the copying process failed? Blood red filled his vision, and just before losing consciousness, his final thought was of his sister, Yayo. When morning came, sunlight spilled into the room. Yesen stirred, finding himself sprawled across the floor. Jolting awake, he quickly checked his body, fear still gripping him. Swinging his leg, he felt a rush of power surge through him, his body lighter than a feather. To his amazement, the status window confirmed it. He now possessed a basic level speed talent. The copying had succeeded. Some time later, at the 5th Academy, a red blur streaked across the open training grounds. It was Yesen, his speed now matching that of a beast. Leaping over trees effortlessly and landing from heights without injury, he felt invincible. As he caught a falling leaf mid-air before it could touch the ground, Yesen marveled at the agility he had gained from the Silver Moon Wolf. After another session of testing his abilities, he sat down to meditate. Energy swirled around his chest, but he knew one truth clearly: though his speed was impressive, he still lacked strength. Deep in thought about how to improve further, he was suddenly interrupted. "Hey! I couldn't find you anywhere," shouted Zhang Bao, a fellow academy student and Yesen's friend. Zhang Bao inspected him closely, poking at his chest and joking, "You're getting stronger. Already a disciple now." Then, in a whisper, Zhang Bao asked if Yesen knew the secret to becoming even stronger in a short time. Curious, Yesen pressed him for the answer. Smiling slyly, Zhang Bao revealed it: monster blood. Monster blood, he said, could boost one's growth dramatically. Hearing this, Yesen's mind raced. He regretted not keeping the Silver Moon Wolf's blood and considered it a cruel loss. But Zhang Bao had more to share. There was a way to obtain monster blood legally. He explained that the academy had secretly set up a zone outside the city where exams involving hunting monster subspecies took place. The beasts there were weaker, their pure lines destroyed long ago. The idea was tempting, and after a bit more prodding, Zhang Bao invited Yesen to join his team. For a moment, Yesen hesitated. Working with others could risk exposing his copy ability. In the end, he politely declined. It was safer to go alone. A month later, at the 5th Academy, the principal was fuming inside his office. Flexing his fingers in rage, he growled that since they hadn't officially sent an exam invitation, there was no reason for anyone to register. Glaring at Yesen, who stood proudly before him, the principal's patience wore thin. But Yesen, shining with confidence, declared that as a student, he had every right to participate. The principal, smirking madly, threw a piece of paper at him, a death waiver contract. Without hesitation, Yesen bent down, picked it up, and signed it after reading every clause carefully. "If you're scared of dying, leave now," the principal shouted angrily. Yesen met his gaze coldly, then silently turned and left the office. A grin played on his lips as he walked down the corridor, his signed death waiver lying on the principal's desk behind him. Watching him leave, the principal muttered darkly, "They really think this will be an ordinary exam. Fools. They tell all regret it." Meanwhile, back at home, Yayo had just woken up. She yawned widely, stretching before heading to the kitchen, calling out for her brother. There, on the table, she found 3 plates of delicious food and a small note hidden under the salt shaker. Reading it, her heart sank slightly. It said that an important event had begun at the academy and that Yesen would return in 3 days. Holding the note tightly, Yayo whispered to herself, hoping that her brother would be safe. Elsewhere, in a ruined city shrouded in desolation, crows with glowing red eyes circled the sky. The ruins were surrounded by barbed wire, and inside, a large square had been cleared. Flags from all 5 academies fluttered in the wind. Gathered under the banner of the 5th Academy, Yesen and Zhang Bao surveyed the other participants. "There are so many people here," Yesen remarked in surprise. "Of course," Zhang Bao replied, hefting a massive axe onto his shoulder. "All 5 academies are participating." Among the crowd stood a man with long black hair and a sinister smile, Mosab, the genius of the 1st Academy. Next to him, a hulking man in a formal suit sneered, muttering that weaklings could be hunted during the exam, and that the fewer participants left, the better. Zhang Bao pointed Mosab out to Yesen, explaining, "He's the strongest of the younger generation in the Mo family." Watching Mosab from the corner of his eye, Yesen felt a twinge of tension in the air. This exam would be far deadlier than anyone expected. After understanding the reason behind such overwhelming arrogance from a single person, the protagonist's thoughts were interrupted by the sharp sound of a sword striking the ground. A man radiating a strong magical aura was approaching Shabe, who immediately shouted at him to stop and demanded to know who dared to draw a sword here, right in front of the 1st Academy. The newcomer halted, lifting his head with pride and shouting furiously for Shabe to come forward. A chilling, ominous smile curved on his lips. Recognizing him, Shabe sneered, asking if it was him again, reminding the man that he had already defeated him 10 times before, and wondered if he was still not tired of losing. The man responded with a wide, crazed smile, and the surrounding birds, sensing the heavy tension in the air, flapped loudly into the sky. The protagonist, surprised, turned toward Shabe and asked who this man was. A bit tense, Zhang Bao answered, explaining that the swordsman was Li Yanxi, a genius of the 2nd Academy, who, despite his talents, had lost multiple times to Shabe in the past. Meanwhile, the director of the 1st Academy, filled with rage, spat on the ground and shouted, wondering where such fools came from. His face was contorted with veins bulging from anger, his eyes burning with hatred and disdain, as if detached from reality itself. Folding his arms across his chest, he barked at the two to stop quarreling. Witnessing this, the protagonist clenched his teeth in anger. In his heart, he thought that the director himself was the one most detached from reality. Unexpectedly, the director raised his hands high and began cheering loudly for Yanxi, shocking everyone around. Yanxi, hearing the sudden support, grew confused and glanced at the cheering man, questioning silently who he was and why he was siding with him over Shabe. Suddenly, a booming voice from a giant loudspeaker reminded everyone that fighting outside the wilderness area was prohibited and violators would be immediately disqualified. Enraged, Yanxi cursed that Shabe had gotten lucky this time. Twirling his sword skillfully in his hands, he then sheathed it with expert precision, glaring at Shabe with eyes full of contempt. With a mad grin, Shabe laughed darkly, vowing to teach Yanxi a lesson once they entered the wilderness. As the tension settled, Yanxi turned to the protagonist. Hands on his hips, he remarked that he admired the bravery it took to cheer him on against Shabe. With a smirk, he ordered the protagonist to introduce himself. Calmly and confidently, the protagonist gave his name, mentioning he was from the 5th Academy. At that moment, the atmosphere around them shimmered mysteriously, and a system window appeared before the protagonist. It revealed Yanxi's stats. His cultivation talent was low, and his swordsmanship talent was rated as average. Despite this, the protagonist's eyes lit up. In his mind, he thought that while Yanxi's cultivation was low, his swordsmanship was decent enough. Smiling brightly, he extended his hand towards Yanxi, wishing him success in surpassing Shabe during the exam. Yanxi, surprised by the genuine encouragement, smiled warmly and shook his hand firmly. In return, he wished the protagonist good luck, urging him to survive the trials ahead. The handshake was strong, filled with mutual respect. At that very moment, a system notification popped up. The protagonist had successfully copied the swordsmanship talent. Minutes later, the loudspeaker's announcement echoed again. The exam was about to begin. Two gatekeepers moved towards the enormous gates, preparing to open them. The loudspeaker called for the 1st Academy students to proceed first. Without delay, the gates opened, and the 1st Academy students rushed in, Shabe leading the way, accompanied by his bodyguard, his expression confident and determined. Watching them, Zhang Bao smiled and commented that the real test had finally begun. With a quick farewell, he dashed towards his own team, calling out to the protagonist to stay safe. The protagonist shouted back his thanks, and just then, Yanxi stretched casually and loosened his joints. He mentioned that the 1st Academy would enter first, followed by the 2nd, and finally the 5th Academy. Waving his hand, he wished the protagonist good luck and left to join his own team. Now alone, the protagonist gazed into the distance, his eyes burning with determination. Without wasting time, he dashed into the dense forest, moving swiftly without hesitation. His face remained calm and emotionless as he weaved through the trees with great speed. After a short while, he landed in a small clearing. Tossing his backpack aside, he thought to himself that this spot would be perfect. Waving his hand in the air, he summoned the system screen. A new message appeared. The intermediate swordsmanship talent had been successfully copied. A prompt appeared, asking whether he wanted to initiate the fusion. With a sharp glint in his eyes, the protagonist selected yes without hesitation. Instantly, his hand swelled, veins bulging as intense pain shot through his arm. Trembling from the agony, he gritted his teeth and thought that while it was painful, it was slightly more bearable compared to before. He was adapting, slowly but surely. Dropping to his knees and bracing himself on all fours, he reminded himself he had to become stronger, no matter the cost. Powerful magic energy burst into the sky from his body as he endured. When he finally stood, his closed eyes snapped open, burning with a fiercer light than before. Without delay, he fell into a practiced stance and unleashed a series of sharp, powerful sword strikes. The trees in front of him, and even those beyond, were sliced cleanly, falling to the ground one after another. Satisfied with the results, the protagonist checked his system window again. Intermediate swordsmanship talent had been officially added. Sheathing his sword and shouldering his backpack, he marched forward, eyes blazing with determination. Meanwhile, the loudspeaker blared once more. The first groups had entered the zone. The Fifth Academy's turn was next. As the protagonist treaded carefully along the forest road, he moved silently, every step measured, fully prepared for the challenges that awaited him ahead. Continuing the fierce exam battles, Yesun walked forward with his head lowered, deep in thought. But suddenly, a glowing tentacle crept up silently behind him. Alert, Yesun immediately caught the sound from behind. Turning slightly, he saw a massive dragon with glowing eyes and razor-sharp fangs rising into the sky. Without a moment's hesitation, Yesun pulled out his sword. His eyes held no fear, only unwavering focus, as he faced the colossal beast. The dragon hissed, preparing to attack, but Yesun was faster. He leaped high into the air, cutting through the distance between them in an instant. Hovering before the open jaws of the giant monster, Yesun swung his sword, gathering momentum behind his back. In the next heartbeat, he cleaved the dragon-like snake cleanly into two halves. His face remained calm and composed, betraying no emotion. As the monster's body convulsed on the ground, Yesun landed lightly, approaching the severed head. Without hesitation, he plunged his sword into the creature's eye, then carefully extracted a massive eyeball. Holding it up, he smirked slightly and said, +1 point in the piggy bank. Placing the eye into his backpack, Yesun commented that the monster was surprisingly weak. After a brief pause, he reminded himself of the exam rules. The more beasts one killed, the higher their rank. Wondering aloud how many more he needed to pass, he glanced at the preliminary rewards list. First place promised the blood of a mid-level monster and a reward of 100,000 U, while 10th place would only offer the blood of a low-level creature. Exhaling heavily, Yesun secured his backpack and muttered that he still had a long road ahead. Without wasting another second, he jumped high, moving forward with renewed determination. No matter what, he thought, it's time to start hunting bigger prey. Suddenly, a loud, desperate cry for help pierced the air. Speeding forward, Yesun caught the sound and instinctively turned his head. What he saw made him stop. From a rooftop, he observed monsters closing in around a young man wielding an axe. The ground behind him was littered with the corpses of his comrades. Yesun immediately recognized him, his friend, Zhang Bao, trembling with fear and shouting that it was too early for him to die, especially before marriage. Large wolves with burning eyes encircled Zhang Bao, closing in with deadly intent. In a panic, Zhang Bao dropped his weapon and fled, but a wolf lunged toward him. Seeing the dire situation, Yesun moved swiftly. Pulling an arrow from his quiver, he readied his bow and released it with impeccable speed. The arrow found its mark, piercing the wolf and sending it crashing lifeless to the ground. Zhang Bao, shocked, turned just in time to see Yesun appear before him. Overwhelmed with relief, Zhang Bao asked if helping him in exchange for points was acceptable. Fearful but trusting, he recognized his friend and savior. Yet before they could speak further, Zhang Bao screamed, warning Yesun that he couldn't handle the fanged wolves. Terror etched deep into his face, cold sweat dripping. Zhang Bao tried to retreat, but Yesun only smiled, an unsettling, confident smile, as powerful magical energy surged around him. In a flash, Yesun activated his speed talent, his figure becoming a blur as he tore through the pack of wolves. None could touch him. When he halted, the monsters lunged from all sides. Calmly, Yesun gripped his sword, his body radiating violent energy and his eyes burning with scarlet flames. Activating his sword talent, Yesun moved like a whirlwind, cutting down every beast in his path. Blood sprayed through the air, and within moments, silence fell. The ground was littered with the remains of the wolves, and at the center stood Yesun, untouched. From the sidelines, Zhang Bao could only whisper in awe, "Wow." After a few minutes, Yesun carefully extracted something from the wolf's mouth, a large fang. Placing it into his backpack, he turned to Zhang Bao and reminded him of their deal. The points for the wolves were his. Of course. Zhang Bao agreed loudly, calling Yesun his savior. Throwing his backpack over his shoulders again, Yesun asked if Zhang Bao planned to continue. But Zhang Bao, sitting heavily on the ground, shook his head. Bitterly, he admitted that the exam was far more dangerous than he had imagined, and he was lucky just to be alive. Looking sadly at the bodies of his teammates, he insisted they needed to evacuate the wounded immediately. Yesun nodded silently, preparing to leave. But just then, Zhang Bao called out, asking him to wait. He warned Yesun about pseudo-monsters lurking deeper in the zone. Intrigued, Yesun asked for details. Zhang Bao explained that among the ranking of creatures, beasts being the weakest, pseudo-monsters next, and true monsters at the top, the pseudo-monsters were formidable enemies. Specifically, students from the First Academy were reportedly targeting a snake over 10 meters long, a known pseudo-monster. Killing one, Zhang Bao added, would award 500 points. At this, a wild, excited grin spread across Yesun's face. His eyes gleamed with fierce determination. Rushing up to Zhang Bao, he grabbed him by the shoulders and shouted, asking where this monster was. Pointing southeast, Zhang Bao directed him. Without wasting another second, Yesun turned and saw that direction shrouded in intense magical energy. Igniting his speed skill once more, he blasted off, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. His body radiated vibrant purple energy as he raced forward. 500 points don't come easy, he muttered to himself. But if I get them, first place will definitely be mine. Watching his friend disappear into the distance, Zhang Bao shouted after him, "Take care of yourself, Yesun." Meanwhile, Yesun pressed on, moving at blinding speed, a purple trail of energy streaming behind him, fully intent on claiming his next prize. As the chaos from the previous battle echoed in the distance, the protagonist dashed across the cracked ground. With a thunderous stomp, his body propelled forward, covering an incredible distance in mere seconds. The wind howled past him as he approached an old, fractured bridge. But then, out of the corner of his eye, something caught his attention. He skidded to a sharp halt, dust rising beneath his feet. His sharp gaze landed on a field not far ahead. Dozens of lifeless bodies were scattered across the ground. He stepped forward cautiously, his expression darkening. These uniforms. First Academy students, he muttered, eyes narrowing. Boom! A sudden explosion lit up the horizon to his right. Flames roared into the sky, and the shockwave rattled the surroundings. Looking at the blast site, he clenched his jaw. So, you really here, he whispered coldly. Without wasting another second, he launched himself high into the air. In an instant, he landed atop a half-collapsed building overlooking the chaos. Crouching low, he scanned the battlefield below. Students of the First Academy were locked in a brutal fight, their attacks focused on a monstrous figure. Then he saw it. A massive, snake-like creature, its scales glistening under the firelight, roared with bloodlust. Is that or the pseudo-monster? Yesun wondered, his breath catching for a moment. From below, a voice rang out. Forward, everyone! Shay bellowed, his sword gleaming as he pointed at the creature. This beast's points are mine. With a battle cry, Shay charged, swinging his sword directly at the monster's hide, but the blade merely bounced off. His bodyguard followed up with relentless strikes. Master, its stamina is dropping fast. The guard shouted, Now's our chance. The snake reared its ugly head and let out a thunderous scream. Shay grinned madly. Then I'll finish this, he roared, bursting off the ground. He soared toward the monster, sword held back like a spear ready to pierce. The snake opened its massive mouth to retaliate, but Shay was faster. Slash! The blade sank deep into the creature's forehead. Blood spurted out and the snake writhed violently. "Ha! Got you!" Shay grinned wildly, forcing the blade deeper. His eyes sparkled with savage glee. But, wham! The snake's tail smashed into him with a violent swing, launching him through the air like a missile. He slammed into a crumbled building wall, creating a crater on impact. Dust cleared. Slowly, he raised his head, chuckling despite the pain. TCH. 500 points. Still mine, he muttered, smirking. From above, the protagonist observed quietly. If only I'd arrived a bit earlier, he said to himself, clenching his fist in frustration. Meanwhile, Shay stood again, brushing dust from his coat. He punched a nearby boulder in triumph, sending it flying. His bodyguard bowed. "Congratulations, master." Shay threw his hands up. "First place belongs to me now," he yelled triumphantly. But the snake's body began to twitch violently. Its skin darkened, glowing with an eerie light. Burning eyes snapped open. It rose again, taller than before, its fury bursting outward like a shockwave. The air turned heavy with dread. Why is it still alive?" one student cried in panic. The snake's tail lashed out, sending students flying like rag dolls. Shay and his guard jumped back, regaining stances. No way did it enter a bloody flash state. Shay thought, sweat forming on his brow. The monster shot into the sky, slithering through the air with unnatural speed. "That's no pseudo-monster," Shay shouted, voice cracking. "That's a full-fledged one." Gasps echoed around him. "Do we chase it?" a student hesitated. "Of course we do," Shay yelled. "That thing's worth 1,000 points." 1,000, the group repeated, stunned. Then, in unison, they bolted after the snake, their competitive fire reignited. In his mind, Shay calculated, "It's weak, that last hit did damage. We have to catch it before others do, or this whole battle was for nothing." From above, Yasin remained still, aura flickering around him. 1,000-point monster, here of all places, he muttered. A twisted grin crept across his face. He turned in the direction of the chase. "I'm the fastest one here." Placing his palm on the rooftop, he whispered to himself, "Let's push speed to its limit." In that instant, his aura exploded, surging like a storm. His eyes glowed with raw determination and madness. The battle had ended, and a sense of accomplishment washed over him. "It's time," he thought to himself, nodding quietly. A moment later, with a determined glint in his eyes, he leaped into the air, a trail of magic shimmering behind him. In mere seconds, he soared through the sky, the wind rushing past as he pushed himself to catch up with the monster. The snake, large and agile, slithered across the terrain, leaving a streak of purple mucus in its wake. It rushed toward a broken, desolate building, clearly intent on hiding there. But the main character was quick to follow. He spotted the trail left behind on the ground, and with a swift landing, he slammed into the earth with a resounding crash. His eyes narrowed as he inspected the trail, realizing it was still fresh. The students from the first academy hadn't arrived yet. Good. Crouching, he dipped a finger into the mucus, bringing it to his face. Definitely not water, he thought, grimacing. It hadn't been there long. As he stood and gazed toward the ruined structure before him, he couldn't help but smile. "Looks like I'll be getting 1,000 points today." With renewed energy, he entered the building, his presence filling the air. The oppressive energy of the monster was palpable, swirling through the space. His own energy surged to meet it, and as he moved forward, he felt its intensity growing. "It's close," he thought, his senses sharpened. Then, the unexpected happened. His breath hitched as he spotted the massive snake. It was hunched beneath a dripping ceiling, its huge mouth open, catching drops of liquid as they slowly gathered and dripped into its maw. The sight was unsettling. What was it drinking? The liquid didn't look like ordinary water. His face hardened, and without hesitation, he unsheathed his sword. The air crackled with energy as his aura flared. Standing in a combat stance, he smirked. "I'll deal with this mystery later. First, I've got points to earn." He lunged, his body shooting forward with explosive force. A small shockwave erupted beneath him as he charged toward the snake. The creature, sensing the attack, retaliated instantly, swinging its colossal arm in an effort to crush him. Shocked, the protagonist dodged, but the snake's strike sent a wave of destruction through the ground. The blow hit with enough force to send him tumbling backward. But he was far from out of control. Midair, he grabbed his bow, pulling it out in a fluid motion. He had only a second. He notched 3 arrows, his aim steady as he soared toward the ground. The first 2 arrows shot out, piercing the monster's eyes. A burst of blood spurted from the wounds, and the snake howled in pain, thrashing wildly. Landing with precision, the protagonist's blade, lost in the earlier exchange, flew toward him. In an instant, his hand closed around the hilt. He grinned fiercely. Now, let's finish this. He sprinted up the snake's arm, his sword cutting through flesh with ease. The creature screamed in agony as blood sprayed from the wound, and veins began to bulge along the protagonist's arm. His face twisted with effort, but he didn't stop. With a final, powerful strike, he cleaved the monster's arm, causing it to falter. The snake convulsed, thrashing its tail in every direction as it slowly collapsed to the ground, dead. The protagonist stood over the fallen creature, breathing heavily. That was close. If Shab's group hadn't weakened it first, I wouldn't have stood a chance. Grinning, he took off his backpack and glanced up at the shard in the ceiling, from which the strange liquid continued to drip. No time for questions right now, he decided, pulling out a bottle from his pack. Whatever this stuff is, the snake was here for it. That means it's valuable. With the bottle positioned beneath the dripping shard, he waited for the liquid to fill it. As it did, he stood, glancing down at the corpse of the monster. Without hesitation, he approached it, his sword still in hand. With a practice motion, he drove the blade into the snake's head and sat upon its massive body, carefully extracting its eyes. This was one hell of a fight, he thought. But there was still more to be done. A few minutes later, Yesen held the enormous eyeball of the slain monster in his hand. He muttered to himself, "This will serve as proof of murder." He then moved toward the massive heart of the snake. Piercing it with his weapon, he marveled, the blood from this monster's heart is incredibly valuable. Green blood gushed from the wound, and Yesen quickly placed a bottle beneath it to collect the liquid. A few moments later, after finishing his task, he glanced at the bottle, now filled with the unknown liquid. With a smirk, he muttered, "This should be enough." However, as he gazed upward at the source of the dripping, he felt a growing uncertainty. No idea what this stuff is. But it'll be useful. With a brief pause, Yesen drew his sword and, in a grim tone, stated, "Not a drop should be left for Sheeb." Without hesitation, he sliced the rock hanging from the ceiling, and the spring of blood fell to the ground. The battle with the monster was over, and it was time to move on. Opening his backpack, Yesen began packing away the collected materials. "The points I've earned should be enough for first place," he said, looking over his shoulder with a malicious grin. "It's time to get out of here." Hours passed. The body of the dead monster was discovered by students from the First Academy. After carefully examining the enormous snake, they reported that its eyeballs had been removed, and the blood from its heart had been pumped out. Sheep, the bodyguard, turned to his master, his hands shaking with anger. "There's nothing left but a corpse," he yelled. "What do we do now?" With a glare that could kill, Sheep asked through gritted teeth, "Who dares steal my 1,000 points?" His fists clenched in fury. Meanwhile, the sky above the city had turned crimson from the sunset. Raindrops splattered against the surfaces of nearby buildings. Yesen crouched down, leaning his hand against the wet stone. He opened his eyes wide, noticing a group of brightly dressed individuals walking through the rubble. Among them, a man in a dark suit stood tall, commanding the others. One of the men observed, "The person who stole the master's victory points must be hiding somewhere. We need to find him." A tall man in a black suit walked behind the youth, asking, "What do we do now?" The leader of the group froze, his eyes glowing with energy as lightning crackled around him. "We search everyone. We meet along the way," he ordered. "This little rat cannot escape." Yesen, watching from the rooftop of a nearby building, frowned. He needed to hide. Bright, crackling energy surrounded his body as he zipped forward through the half-ruined streets, leaving flashes of lightning in his wake. Leaping over broken stone beams, Yesen soared through the air, momentarily stopping to observe the group below. He had to act fast. The exam would end in 3 days, and when the points were tallied, it would be clear that he had killed the monster. On the ground, the protagonist's foot splashed into the wet pavement as he walked along the empty road. The ruined buildings loomed around him. "I need to make the most of this time," he thought. "I'll use this shelter to improve my cultivation talent and become stronger." Yesen dropped his bag onto the floor and assumed a lotus position, holding a glass bottle filled with the monster's blood. "How much will this strengthen me?" he pondered. Without hesitation, he threw his head back and drank the contents. His face twisted in disgust. "Should have packed some peanuts for this," he muttered. Squeezing the bottle in his hand, he reminded himself, for my sister's safety, I need to get stronger. As the energy coursed through him, bright lights surrounded his body. Yesen's eyes opened wide. This is incredible, he thought. The cultivation speed is 4 times faster. Meanwhile, back at school, Yayo, sitting at her desk, sneezed loudly. Anyone remember me? She mused, rubbing her nose. I hope everything's fine with my brother. Yesen's hands crackled with energy as he felt the power flowing through him. His clothes fluttered from the rising energy. No wonder Changdong and the others cultivate so fast. It's not just talent. They're using auxiliary items. With 2.5 days left, Yesen knew he had to use every moment wisely. I've only got a short time to prepare, he thought. I need to make these points count. 3 days passed, and the day of reckoning arrived. The heroes gathered around tables, where a black banner stood, marking the end of the exam. Yayo stood up and began recording the data. Jiang scored 10 points, B scored 23 points, Zohe 0 points, she announced. Yesen stood confidently at the table, a mischievous smile playing on his lips. His hand went out in front of him as he asked the teacher, "Could you help me with the calculation?" In his bag, brightly shining stones glowed, a testament to the effort he'd put in. The girl raised her eyebrows as she announced that the guy had earned 195 points. The boys around her gritted their teeth and frowned, muttering that this was very impressive. Just then, Sheeb appeared, carrying a bag and grinning, saying that those points were nothing compared to his own. Behind him followed a bodyguard dressed in a sharp black suit. The guy in the red jacket stepped forward, shaking his head in surprise. I didn't expect Yangzi to be so strong, he muttered. Sheeb smirked, his eyes gleaming as he asked, "Are you really planning to compete with me with such a measly number of points?" Yangzi frowned, clearly frustrated. This guy's up to his old tricks again, he grumbled. Sheeb smiled maliciously, pulling out a heap of jewelry from his backpack. Go ahead, count them, he challenged. The girl's eyes widened in shock as she announced, Sheeb has earned 427 points. The boy beside her frowned, his voice rising as he shouted, no surprise there. He's always been the hero. The girl raised her hand to her face, whispering to herself, that's a huge gap. I only have 30 points. Yangzi pointed at Sheeb with a glare. You're a shameless fool, taking points from others, he accused. With a mock shrug, Sheeb spread his arms out wide. I earned these points thanks to my own talents, he replied with a smirk. The young man clenched his fists, teeth grinding. You're a bastard, he growled. The girls approached, one of them smiling at the guy standing next to Yangzi. For so many points, you're sure to take first place, she said cheerfully. Sheeb's smile faded slightly as he muttered, first place will have over 1,000 points. The girl's eyes went wide in surprise. How is that even possible? One asked, stunned. The director of the 5th Academy, who had been observing the situation, put his hands in his pockets and asked, did all the students who survived manage to make it out? The girl adjusted her hair and raised an eyebrow. If someone didn't make it out, they are probably dead, she said matter-of-factly. The director smiled, a hint of amusement in his expression. That can only mean one thing, he said. First place goes to Sheeb. Just then, a figure emerged from the distance, slowly making its way toward them. The crowd gasped in surprise. The director turned, his eyes narrowing in confusion. Yangzi, carrying a backpack, approached. Slowly, the bag seemed to pulse ominously. His eyes shone brightly, but his face was hidden in the shadow of the bag. As he drew nearer, the bag seemed to pull out strange, monstrous red eyes and sharp claws. The girl's eyes widened even further as she caught sight of the monster's eye, her heart racing. What? What is that? She whispered. Yangzi glanced at her from under his brows, a cold smirk on his lips. So, how many points do I have? He asked, his voice dripping with arrogance. The announcement came over the speakers. The protagonist, Yangzi, has earned 136 points. A hush fell over the crowd. The girl blinked, still trying to process the information, before smiling at him. Congratulations on taking first place, she said. Your reward is 3 bottles of mid-level monster blood and 100,000 yuan. Yangzi accepted the awards with a satisfied smile, as the heroes around them celebrated. Jiang Bao clenched his fists, saying, this young man is amazing. Yangzi rubbed his chin in thought, clearly impressed. How did he manage to do it? He wondered aloud. Sheeb gritted his teeth, his expression turning sour. A thief has appeared, he sneered. A puppy from the 5th Academy. Yangzi narrowed his eyes, his tone turning serious. Get everything you can on him, he ordered his bodyguard. The bodyguard bowed his head, silently agreeing to the task. Jiang Bao raised an eyebrow, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Looks like Yangzi really gave them all hell. Our academy finally took first place in the exam, he said with pride. The girls, still in shock, smiled happily. We never thought something like this would happen, one of them admitted. The director, who had been quiet until now, sighed and muttered, the boy's an idiot. One of the heroes beside him raised an eyebrow. You not happy that Yangzi brought glory to the academy? He asked, puzzled. The director looked over at Yangzi, his face darkening. That's the problem, he said. He insulted and angered the Mo family. They are very strong and influential. I fear that something might happen to him. Jiang Bao closed his eyes, deep in thought. I'm worried about my friend, he admitted, a note of concern in his voice. The leaderboard flashed on the screen, showing the top 3 heroes. Yangzi, of the 5th Academy, claimed first place with 136 points. His reward was 3 bottles of mid-level monster blood and 100,000 yuan. Sheeb, from the 1st Academy, secured second place with 427 points, earning 1 bottle of mid-level monster blood and 100,000 yuan. Yi from the 2nd Academy rounded out the top 3 with 3 bottles of low-level monster blood and 50,000 yuan. The photographer asked everyone to look at the camera, and the young men smiled for the photo, with Sheeb and Yangzi posing nearby. The exam was officially over. The heroes congratulated the top 3, acknowledging their well-deserved awards. The boys stood proudly on the podium, surrounded by cheerful applause. Sheeb's face was tight with frustration as he glared at Yangzi. You brave, stealing what belongs to others, he muttered. Yangzi smirked, giving Sheeb a cold, arrogant look. It was mutual, he replied smoothly. Yangzi frowned slightly. Have you forgotten your own words? He asked, his voice cutting through the tension. Sheeb scowled, holding up a hand. Shut up, I am not talking to you, he snapped. The young man, standing confidently with his hands on his hips, added, just like Sheeb, I took those points thanks to my own talents. The hero, shaking his head, chuckled darkly. What talents? He asked, the mocking tone clear in his voice. In the ongoing story of copyability, Yen's determination was evident as he took a step forward, suggesting they settle things through battle. His eyes gleamed with an intense resolve, his face obscured by the shadow cast from his brow. He murmured to himself, if this opponent wants to test me, I'll be more than willing. Let's see what you've got. Bright streams of red and blue energy began to swirl around their bodies, a display of raw power. Sheeb, watching from the sidelines, couldn't help but smile, recognizing the rising tension in the air. This is getting more interesting, she thought to herself, eager to see how things would unfold. Meanwhile, the protagonist stood frozen, his brows furrowed. He knew the truth of his situation. If he became the target of such a dangerous person, escape would be impossible. The only solution was to grow stronger, so strong that his enemies wouldn't even dare to challenge him. But the weight of that realization settled heavily in his heart. The sunset painted the sky above the city in hues of pink, marking the end of another turbulent day. The hero reached for the door handle, his thoughts racing. Entering the house, he kicked off his shoes and called out to his younger sister, letting her know he had returned. Yayu, full of energy, rushed to hug him, her arms wrapped around him tightly. She pulled away slightly, her eyes wide with curiosity. Where have you been? You've been gone so long, she exclaimed. She stepped back and started inspecting him, checking if he was injured. Are you okay? She asked with genuine concern. Yen assured her, I'm fine, really. A smile spread across his face as he reached for his backpack. I've brought you some gifts, he said, his eyes glinting with mischief. Yayu's face lit up with excitement. What is it? What did you get me? She asked eagerly. When Yen opened the bag, a small fortune spilled out, along with a few unusual items. Whoa! Is this all for me? She gasped, her hands reaching for the cash and the bottles he pulled out. The young man placed 3 bottles of monster blood, a wad of money, and a mysterious book in front of her. Yayu couldn't believe her eyes. This is more than enough for a wedding, she said with a grin. But Yen didn't seem to share the same excitement. He sighed, sitting down on the floor. Actually, it's for you to use for your education. And pocket money. Of course. Yayu tilted her head, a curious expression on her face. Wait, does that mean I can eat meat every day now? She picked up the glass bottle with the bright liquid, examining it closely. What's this? Yen smiled slightly, picking up the book. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I got you a reference book about jewelry. Thought you might like it. Yayu's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Jewelry, she repeated. Can I see it too? As Yen flipped through the pages, his eyes widened in disbelief. Wait. This can't be real. He looked at the page before him, his mind racing. There, in front of him, was a description of a rare and potent elixir, the elixir of the Earth's core. The page described it as a liquid essence formed by terranite stones that had absorbed the energy of the heavens and earth for centuries. Drinking it could enhance one's talent for cultivation, but only if their talent was of below average level. There was also a chance that the elixir could form primordial terranite stones that could improve higher-level talents. But he'd heard of them before, the very stones he had destroyed. The hero stared at the bottle in Yayu's hands, realization dawning on him. It's the elixir? It could really help her. No, it's better if she drinks it. Wait, Yayu said, her voice trembling with surprise. You want me to drink this? She looked down at the bottle in her hand, confused and unsure. But my talent hasn't even awakened yet, Yen's thoughts raced. He understood that by drinking the elixir, she'd improve her basic level of cultivation. His only concern was how much stronger she'd become. He needed her to have the strength to protect herself, even if she didn't fully understand its significance. The girl hesitated, her gaze shifting from the bottle to her brother. But? Couldn't we sell this? It's probably worth a lot of money, Yen shook his head, flipping through the book. It's not just about money. If we sell it, someone will eventually come looking for those primordial terranite stones. And they wouldn't believe our story. It could put us in danger. Yayu grinned, twirling the bottle in her hands. So you destroyed them for no reason. Yen's expression hardened as he took the bottle from her hands. It would be a pity if you didn't drink it. Trust me. Yayu's eyes widened in shock. You're really going to make me drink it, aren't you? With a firm grip, Yen squeezed her cheeks, forcing her to open her mouth. Open up, Yayu, he said gently, his voice softened by a hint of playfulness. I'm being killed. Yayu screamed, struggling against her brother's grip. The bottle was empty in an instant, its contents flowing down her throat. And just like that, the fate of the hero's sister was changed forever. The young man stood up with a smile, his curiosity piqued. What does it taste like? He asked. The girl, sitting on the sofa, cleared her throat and replied with a soft smile, it's very warm and refreshing. The young man frowned, a glimmer of confusion in his eyes. Something didn't quite add up. Was her cultivation talent still at a basic level? Maybe the book was wrong. He didn't know, but the data in the status window showed that something was off. The girl shifted slightly, her voice trailing off as she sat back, clearly feeling sleepy. I'll cook a bit later, she said, yawning. No problem, the young man assured her, his attention still on the status window. His eyes narrowed in concentration. He was trying to figure out why things weren't progressing as expected. The clock ticked on. An hour passed. The protagonist, sitting cross-legged in a meditative lotus position, was surrounded by a gentle glow as energy radiated from his body. His mind focused, but just as he was about to settle deeper into meditation, he gritted his teeth. Suddenly, the status window above the girl's head flickered into view, revealing new data. She was a human, with average cultivation talent and a low-level freezing talent that was not yet awakened. The young man's eyes widened. His own cultivation level had increased by 2 points. He needed to confirm something. He reached for a bottle of monster blood, thinking to himself, my sister will definitely become a first-class warrior. His eyes sparkled with hope as he looked at her, his resolve solidifying. He whispered mentally to Sheeb, prepare yourself. I won't let you beat me. Yin, somewhere nearby, hid his face in shadows. His red eyes gleamed ominously, reflecting a darkness that contrasted the bright night sky. He opened his mouth, pouring out the contents of a bottle. Meanwhile, the young man focused back on his food, reaching for the peanuts on his plate, the taste bitter in his mouth. He tried to ignore it. Monster blood, how many times can it speed up my progress? He thought, throwing more peanuts into his mouth. As if in answer to his question, bright streams of energy appeared around him, swirling in a vibrant dance. The hero gasped, his eyes widening in disbelief. The increase was 8 times his normal output. The energy around him flickered a brilliant pink. This is terrifying, he thought. If he had the blood of a higher-level monster, he could have broken through to the warrior stage. But there was no time to dwell on that now. He looked at the 2 remaining bottles of monster blood. Only 2 left. What will I do after these are gone? The grove near the 5th Academy was calm and serene, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. Birds chirped in the distance. 10 days had passed. A small bird perched on the head of Yasin, who was meditating on a stone ledge near the academy. Suddenly, Jiang Bi approached quickly, gritting his teeth and repeating the question that had been gnawing at him. What should we do? Yasin stopped meditating, his eyes opening as he looked at Jiang Bi. What's wrong? He asked calmly. Gasping for air, Jiang Bi leaned forward, calling out a name, Sheep. Yasin's expression grew serious. Has he come here? Jiang Bi shook his head, panting. No. He's locked himself in his room. He's planning something. He'll probably break through to the warrior stage soon, then deal with you. The young man crossed his arms, his face unreadable. So, he's waiting to challenge me after becoming a warrior. Exactly, Jiang Bi muttered, frustrated. If he breaks through, he'll crush you like a bug. Yasin raised an eyebrow. I am cultivating too. I am not afraid. Jiang Bi frowned, concern in his eyes. Sheep is noble. He has resources, and you have 3 bottles of mid-level monster blood. You've drunk them already, haven't you? Yasin gave a faint smile. Yes, that's true. Jiang Bi knelt down, his hands pressed to the ground. Then you redoomed, he said softly. As your friend, I'll help arrange the funeral. I'll take care of your sister. The young man stood still, his thoughts focused on the situation. He glanced downward, recalling that his only remaining blood came from the low-level snake and its heart. After using it, he hoped to break through to the advanced disciple stage, though that was still a far cry from becoming a warrior. Yet, something within him stirred. He was confident. The talents he had honed would be enough. Even a warrior could fall to him. At that moment, his eyes lit up. It was time to move forward. The Mo family's mansion loomed. Ahead, its imposing structure casting a shadow over the land. A dark sky hung above the estate, birds scattering in the wind. The man in a dark suit stood at the entrance, and the cracks in the stone door began to form, breaking apart as bright energy surged from the shattered pieces. A silhouette appeared in the distance. A bodyguard knelt, his hand resting on the ground. Master, he said, congratulations on reaching the warrior level. The air shifted, and the figure's eyes shone like fire, muscles rippling beneath the dark shadows. His power had grown,